Welcome to This Week in South Carolina. I'm Gavin Jackson. This week, Governor Henry McMaster has reissued his work or home mandate for another 15 days. And his task force, Accelerate SC, has met to look at reopening the state's economy. We look at how the tourism industry is doing, as well as how the small business community is faring. Now the latest from this week. The call for the reopening of closed businesses in South Carolina was on display last Friday as protesters took to the streets around the State House.
I'm not afraid. We don't need to be afraid in South Carolina. Our numbers are very low. Get back to work. We can all, work together to make sure that it doesn't spread, but we need to get back to work.
But even when businesses are given the green light, that doesn't mean everything will go back to normal.
There will be change. When the governor and I were together the other day, we both knew that we're looking at a new normal. We don't know exactly what it is, and that's what this group has got to help us figure out.
Commerce Secretary Bobby Hitt is part of some 30 business and political leaders on the governor's Accelerate SC task force. One of those members was North Myrtle Beach Mayor Marilyn Hatley.
Horry County routinely counts for approximately 15% of the state's total net taxable sales. So as you can see, the loss of business in Horry County will have a major negative impact financially, not only on our cities, but on the state.
The city of Myrtle Beach reopened its 8 miles of beach this week, and City Council approved a phased approach to reopen hotels starting Friday. They'll bring them up to full capacity this summer. The county ban on hotels and short-term rentals also expired on Thursday and was not renewed. However, after 3 weeks of declining death rates from its peak in early April, South Carolina saw an increase this week. Tuesday marked the biggest one-day increase ever, with 15 deaths reported, which was nearly the total of the week before. DHEC also found that 29 previous deaths have been associated with the virus, putting the statewide death count as of late Wednesday at 232. On a positive note, the agency said that as of April 27th, 76% of those South Carolinians infected with COVID-19 have recovered. Still, healthcare workers remain on the front lines of the fight, and as a thank you, F-16s from the South Carolina Air National Guard flew over medical facilities across the state on Monday. In North Charleston, the aerospace giant Boeing said it's set to reopen its 787 Dreamliner plant next week, following a brutal first quarter loss of $641 million. Demand and other economic headwinds are forcing the company to cut its workforce of 160,000 by 10%. In places like North Charleston, home to some 7,000 workers, the cuts will be even greater, according to President and CEO Dave Calhoun.
We now plan to reduce the 787 production rate to 10 per month in 2020, and then gradually reduce to 7 per month by 2022. We will continue to evaluate the rate beyond 2022 to balance supply and demand. But the sharp reduction in demand for our airplanes that we see out over the next several years won't support the size of the workforce we have today.
Now joining me is Duane Parrish. He's the Director of South Carolina Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Duane, thanks for joining us.
Sure, glad to be here.
So can you kind of give us a broad overview of how the year started out, what 2020 was expected to be, and then kind of what the past several weeks have made the year into at this point?
Sure. Well, 2019 starting was a record year, our 7th consecutive. 2020, January started out, and even halfway through February was extremely strong. We're up, depending upon the measurement, anywhere from 2 to 8% over the prior year. We thought 2020 would be another record year. Obviously, that all changed as the late February, then into March, and then bottomed out really in our last couple of weeks, or the first 2 weeks of April. I mean, tourism overall down about anywhere from 80 to 85%. Wow. Hotel occupancy is down to 20 to 25% at a time of year when it normally be 80 to 85%. So you see what we've hopefully at the bottom, and we'll do nothing but go up from here.
And what indicators are you looking at? You're talking about hotel occupancy. You're talking about we've seen events canceled. And are you getting early revenue estimates too as well, I would assume, maybe?
That's correct. Yeah, revenue estimates are down anywhere from 80 to 85% in terms of overall tourism spending. That includes categories like hotels, restaurants, shopping, attractions, golf, all those things where visitors spend money. And they pay accommodation tax, sales tax, hospitality tax, fuel tax. All those things are all down. Tourism contributes $1.8 billion in state and local taxes for South Carolina, so you can do the math and see how much that's going to be down as well.
So, Duane, so looking forward now, I mean, you're on that Accelerate SC task force. You're looking at what needs to be done because obviously we've seen the damage done right now, and I'm guessing maybe a bottom's coming soon, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, you guys are still kind of working through things. We're getting into this spring, late spring, early summer season now. What are the steps forward? What are you guys looking at right now in terms of getting things reopened in the state?
Sure. Well, it's sort of a crawl, walk, run process. This didn't happen overnight, and it won't fix itself overnight. But short version is hotels were never, for the most part, were never closed. There was a local ordinance in Myrtle Beach, but statewide, hotels were not required to close. There were some stipulations about where people could come from, but they never were required to close. Restaurants, on the other hand, were required to close their dining rooms. So one of the things we put forward yesterday in the Accelerate SC subgroup meeting was a restaurant plan to reopening outdoor dining on May 4th, and then reopening the indoor dining room, albeit new, somewhere between May 11th and May 18th. Those were the suggested dates from the South Carolina Restaurant Lodging Association to the governor to sort of get that. A lot of the other meeting was talking about barbershops and hairstylists and salons. I think everybody wants to go out to eat and get a haircut, is what some of it is. But it's sort of that crawl, walk, run process. We have to build faith back in the consumer, much like TSA did after 9/11. Make people feel safe to come out again, go to restaurants, go to shopping malls, go to hotels, all those kinds of things. But one of the things we're doing, Gavin, is we're targeting the drive market. I'm not sure people are going to come out first and fly on a plane right away. We're a state that 80% of people drive into anyway. That's probably going to be 95% going forward for the next few months. So we'll go into those drive markets that are within a 350-mile radius around Columbia to draw people into the state. The good news is we are a drive state, and we're well positioned for that. And the cabin fever is very high right now. We know people want to get out. Our state parks will open up Friday, May 1st. And so that gives us an opportunity to sort of get people out for that first sort of run into getting out and about from their house.
Yeah, we did see, Myrtle Beach moving forward with reopening their beaches, Horry County doing that too. And again, like you mentioned about the hotels, specific to that area are also come back online. And the short-term rentals, it sounds like they're doing a phased-in approach when it comes to occupancy for the hotels. I'm wondering, is that something that you guys are recommending as well, or is that just something that they've come up with on their own? I know at the local level they did. Is that something you guys would advocate maybe statewide, or what's it look like when we talk about, hotel occupancy and attracting people back?
Sure. We haven't advocated any specific parameters in regard to occupancy statewide, but we know that the market is very soft and it'll open up very soft. Despite the cabin fever, a lot of people will be reluctant to travel from day one. So I think occupancy by market forces will be low, but that's okay. It gives the more and more people travel, and the more they talk about it to neighbors and friends and on social media, I think the more people will venture out and do things like go to a restaurant, go to a mall, go out, take a trip somewhere. For the weekend, I think this trips are short-term to begin with, 2 or 3 days, a weekend to go somewhere. They'll get in a car and go. But we think that builds up confidence to take longer trips and eventually a year from now, sometime later this year, leading international travel as well.
And I guess another thing too, when we look at places, like Myrtle Beach, a lot of things that make that place Myrtle Beach are the attractions or the amusements, which are still shut down because of the governor's executive order. So it's really a matter when those get reopened up again. So it sounds like everything's going to be kind of in phases. It sounds like you're talking about dining restaurants, and you did talk about getting the consumer confidence back. What are some of the ways that we're going to see that happen to make sure that people, when they do come back, that it's not a herky-jerky return and a spike or something like that, but to make sure it's it's consistent.
Yeah, I'll speak specifically to restaurants. You'll see paper menus or chalkboard menus, or your people pull up the menu on their phone. You'll see tables spaced further apart. You'll see tables limited to 6 people. You'll see employees wearing masks. You'll know that employees, their temperature has been taken that day when they came to work. A lot of those things along the way, you'll see signage that you haven't seen before in restaurants. It'll be like that in our state parks when we open up as well. All those things are sort of in place to make sure people do the things they're supposed to do in regard to social distancing, but also give them that confidence that we've looked at this and we've had DHEC along the way with us to give us those plans that will not only work, but give people that confidence to come back into retail, come back into hotels and travel again.
Is there any worry about compliance? I mean, I know we're talking about, these social distancing measures. There have been some places, some cases of issues. Are you worried about when these beaches really kind of get to full throttle, when people are really out, after, Memorial Day, when things really kind of are traditionally kick up, that maybe there could be, compliance issues, or is that just something that's going to really need to be managed on a locality by locality basis to maintain?
It will be. I think where there are large crowds, you mentioned the beach, certainly there's a possibility for people not to practice social distancing. I think local law enforcement, in the case of state park rangers, authorities will be, looking out for those kinds of things to try to remind people to do that. It's not something that, everybody wants to do, but it will take a while for people to get used to this. It is a new normal. So given that, I think people will be pretty understanding, but, it's the handshake has gone away for the time being. So that's something, particularly in the South, we're used to doing. So I think that changes the norm somewhat, but over time, people will ease into that and become the new norm.
And Duane, we are kind of seeing a new normal return as well when we look at these bigger sporting events. We heard news about how NASCAR will be restarting back up here in South Carolina, in Darlington, at Darlington Raceway, holding 2 races in May. I'm just wondering, but without spectators. So it's going to be a very interesting situation because you're used to seeing that Labor Day race up in Darlington with a $53 million impact from that weekend. I'm just wondering about some of these events and maybe the RBC Heritage. What are we seeing right now, maybe trickling back in terms of the future and just these big sporting events that we're used to having here?
Sure. Yeah. Again, part of the new norm, no spectators for a while, and that includes Darlington. That includes the RBC Heritage, which is in mid-June. Darlington mid-May. I think you'll see a lot of that throughout the summer. Made for television events. The good news is it showcases South Carolina at a time, keeps our state sort of top of mind, that we are a sports capital in many respects for many things. That these are great events and showcase Darlington, showcase Hilton Head to the rest of the country. So for later, when people travel, they'll have that in the top of mind to be able to pick those spots, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. And just with a few minutes left, when we look at how this ranks, this downturn right now, just the past few weeks causing such, havoc on our economy and of course worldwide, I'm wondering how does this rank when we look at the Great Recession in South Carolina tourism? Was that something? I mean, was that obviously a little bit more spread out and it took a long time to get back versus this kind of sudden jolt? I mean, are we going to have the same fallout, you would say, maybe from the Great Recession, or how is this different?
Well, I think this is worse. When I look back at that Great Recession, so to speak, businesses were down anywhere from 20 to 25%. Thinking of hotel spending, hotel occupancy, for example. Today, hotel occupancy is down 70 to 80%. So this is a much more dramatic impact. I think timing, the recovery will be slightly faster than it was. Although we recovered from the Great Recession by like 2012, we were sort of out of it. That took 3 to 4 years. I think this is probably 1 to 2 years. But a greater dip in the so-called graph of economic cycle of what's happened this time. I think too that some businesses won't come back. Some restaurants won't come back. Some hotels may come back as something different. There will be some new normal for different things, attractions as well. But we have groups working on all those to reopen at a certain time frame and to reopen safely and to make people feel confident about going back into those, from attractions, hotels, and restaurants and golf courses.
And what's the overall look for the season, for the outlook for this year? Is it just going to be, you're talking about $24 billion in spending from tourism that it generates in a year. What do we look like for 2020 as far as you can tell at this point?
Our estimates at this point will be down anywhere from 45 to 50% for the year. Obviously, January and February were up. March, April, May dramatically down, and then sort of a leveling off a little bit as we go through the year, but somewhere in the 45 to 50% range is what will be down for the year.
Gotcha. All right, Duane Parrish, Director of South Carolina Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gavin.
Joining me to discuss the state of small businesses in South Carolina is Frank Knapp. He's a small business chamber president and CEO. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be on.
Frank, it's been a few weeks since we last spoke. A lot has changed. Some businesses were forced to close. Some have since reopened. They've been allowed to reopen. Some have closed permanently. I want to know what are you hearing, what are you seeing on the ground, and what the landscape looks like in South Carolina for small businesses?
Well, there are certainly a lot of small businesses that are closing. There are reports all across the state regarding especially restaurants that are shutting down for good, not just temporarily. Because they simply can't be without financing the money that comes in every day helps them pay their rent and pay for their supplies, pays for employees. So we have restaurants going out of business, examples of that across the state, and other businesses, all personal service businesses in South Carolina. These people have no money. And then, you have plenty of other stores that are closed. So it's not a good situation. We will, unfortunately, going to be losing a lot of small businesses when this is all over.
Frank, a lot of that, I'm wondering, do you think that is a result of because of the way that the Paycheck Protection Program was rolled out in the first phase? I know there's been more money that came online this week. South Carolina Department of Commerce said that 23,000 loans were approved, representing $3.8 billion in that first round. Obviously, I'm wondering what that demand was like before. It sounds like we heard plenty of stories from people after that money ran out that they were left on the hook, and a lot of big small businesses were getting money that maybe they didn't need. What was it like here in South Carolina?
Well, I think it's what happened here was the same thing that happened across this country. It was not a fair process. It was not first come, first served, as was promoted by the SBA and Department of Treasury. It was really built for that to harm. It isn't built to harm small businesses, but they certainly weren't benefited as they should have been. Things are difficult. The PPP loans ran out before 14 days was up. A lot of that money went to larger businesses, smaller businesses, anything under 500. We have examples of publicly traded companies getting massive amounts of loans, billionaires and their companies getting massive amount of loans. We know that the financial institutions were taking care of their best customers first, which were asking for more money. So in the end, small businesses in South Carolina weren't served well. In fact, only less than 6% of all small businesses in South Carolina, that's over 400,000, got any of that first round money. Now we're going on right now with the second round. As of just yesterday, $90 billion had already been allocated nationwide out of the 310. And so we'll see how this plays out, whether it's a more equitable distribution of this PPP money or not. But the problem is we're still going to have millions across this country that aren't going to be able to get any of this funding, and certain tens of thousands in South Carolina that aren't going to get any of this funding. So we're still in a crisis, and we will have to revisit this again. Congress will have to come back again and look at how to get more money. We've been advocating that these should have been grants the whole time. And it should be anybody should have come in who needed the money, should have been given a grant, no questions asked. They could have done what they wanted with the money. But unfortunately, they chose this route of using private lenders and making them loans.
And when you say thousands won't be able to get this, do you mean because you expect this to run out again, and then again people will still not have gotten the money that they need, even though this is the second round of applications for it?
Well, the money may go further this time. I don't expect it's going to go much more than another week. In fact, I doubt if it goes all the way to the end of next week. Money will go a little bit further. Maybe at the end of the process, we'll have somewhere around 10 to 15% of all small businesses in this country have gotten some type of funding, and maybe the same number here in South Carolina. But that still leaves a lot of small businesses across this country and in South Carolina that have not received any financial help, and they are striving every day to survive, and a good percentage of them just won't be able to do that.
And is a lot of the money going towards restaurants or these really tight margin businesses? Or because I feel like some people might say, well, you're a business, you should be planning for things. Obviously, this is so just unprecedented for a lot of people. But what kind of businesses really need this money, and which ones are not getting it?
So it was set up supposedly that small businesses that had other access to money, either a line of credit with a financial institution, or they could go to the stock market, or they could do something to get money, weren't supposed to be in line to get this PPP funding, but in fact they were. And we have example after example after example of businesses that probably should not have been in line and getting millions of dollars. That money is taken out of the hands of restaurants across. The independent restaurants in this state are just suffering dramatically, and only a very small number of them actually were able to get the funding in the first round. We'll see if it's any better this time, but again, we will have major problems even when this round of funding goes away. We're still going to have major problems.
Jobless claim numbers came out. We saw them topping 30 million this week. 400,000 of those are in South Carolina. But we have seen 2 weeks of decreased claims, but of course we're still talking about 400,000 South Carolinians out of work. There's also concerns now, Frank, that when these jobs come back, when we start slowly reopening this economy, which we'll talk about in a moment, that people won't be wanting to go back to work. Maybe they don't feel safe, or maybe some people have said that they don't want to go back to their low wages, perhaps, since they're making so much money now. What's the situation there, and how do small business owners remedy this and deal with it going forward as they do slowly begin to reopen?
So we are not going to get to the economy that we were before this all started. You can open up a business, but if the consumers won't come in the door, you haven't really achieved much. So that's the big problem. There are probably ways that small businesses can reopen and have the proper safeguards in place to protect the workers as well as the customers. But if those customers don't feel like coming in, they still don't feel right, businesses are still going to lose money and being in survival mode. And as regarding the workers, a lot of workers are getting some good money, stimulus money to help them, and that's good. We want the workers of South Carolina to have money because they have bills that they have to pay, and that helps keep the economy going. But if if they're offered a job back at their own business and they turn it down, then we'll see if the unemployment agency here in the state sort of enforces it that they cannot get any more of that unemployment money.
Yeah, because it sounds like there's also concerns about whether there'll be some tension between employees and employers because maybe the workplace isn't as safe as it needs to be. Again, that's going to go back to that confidence issue, which you're talking about, not only with consumers, but with employees and employers and having the right amount of protective equipment. How do we remedy that? How do these employers, how do consumers make sure that the proper safeguards will be in place? Is that something that the government needs to do, or is that going to be on case-by-case, business-by-business basis?
Well, I would hope that the small business owner that wants to open up will take the precautions to safeguard the public. And they'll have to have a conversation with their employees because if they don't need to bring back all the employees, maybe there will be some that do want to come back, and those are the ones who will be rehired. So it is going to be on a case-by-case basis, but the government does have a responsibility of putting in place the measures that all businesses ought to take so that they can keep their employees, themselves, and their customers safe. I mean, those guidelines are important because we shouldn't expect every small business owner to know everything. There ought to be information provided and guidance provided to them. Everybody wants to open up. Everybody would like to do that, but we can't do it in the way we had been doing it before. We've got to be smarter. We've got to make sure that we can try to minimize the risk, and we certainly want to avoid that second wave of viruses hitting us in the fall.
Frank, we have about 3 minutes left. When you look at what the governor's been doing for Accelerating SC, this task force of industry leaders, politicians, and the like, do you think this is the right phased-in approach? Do you think the governor's handling this correctly in terms of slowly looking at how things can recover? You're saying we're not going to get back to where we were before. A lot of people have been saying that as well. What do you think it looks like, and how do you think we do slowly go into the future, our new normal at this point?
Well, the governor is basically working with the business community to get their ideas and to get their input on exactly how things should open up with those guidelines we were talking about. So that is good. I mean, so congratulations to him for taking that step and reaching out to the business community and asking them for their input. And I think they're being methodical, they're being thoughtful, but there are hurdles, that have to be achieved before everything is opened up, and we have to watch those numbers. We really have to watch how many people are still contracting the virus, and how many people are in the hospital, how many people are passing away. Those numbers are going to tell us sort of where we are, but even when those numbers start receding, we know the virus is still out there. And until we get the vaccine or the medicine to treat it, or have all the testing that we need, which we don't have, then we really have to be very cautious.
Mm-hmm. Frank, with about a minute left, we've been talking about the difficulties facing businesses. Have you seen any silver linings? Have you seen some businesses maybe surviving? I know a lot of businesses have shifted gears. They're producing items that they weren't doing before, but they know there's demand for, such as PPE. Any potential changes in people maybe even rediscovering or looking at new industries to go into as a result of all this change?
Well, in every crisis there are opportunities. And small business owners, those entrepreneurs, they look for opportunities to make money. And the successful ones figure out where they need to take their business or to start a new business. So we're always optimistic about entrepreneurship and addressing a situation. So, things are not good at all now, but down the road, you will see entrepreneurship come back and maybe take a different path for the type of businesses that they have. It's all remaining to be seen.
Gotcha. A lot to keep looking forward to in the future. Hopefully things do improve there. That's Frank Knapp with the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much.
To stay up to date on the latest COVID-19 news and how it affects South Carolina, check out the South Carolina Lead podcast. It's a podcast that we are releasing multiple times a week to keep you up to speed on what's happening in the state. You can find it wherever you find podcasts or on southcarolinapublicradio.org. From South Carolina ETV studios here in Columbia, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.